Them birds gonna fly, you already know.
Hello, World Bald Eagle, coming at you with another video. It's been a lot of new updates in Eagle Nation. Just wanted to give the news cycle some room to breathe and speak on some things. So we'll start off with Reed Blankenship. Shout out to Reed Blankenship. He played for the team for 4 years. He was an undrafted guy, and he made it all the way to be a Super Bowl champion. He was a captain last year. So, that just shows that if you work really hard, man, you can achieve the things you're trying to do in life. So I always like stories like that from guys like Reed Blankenship because, like I said, he was undrafted, turned out to be a captain on his squad, and he's also a Super Bowl champion now. He's now with the Houston Texans. I felt like his best year with the Eagles was that Super Bowl run where the Eagles won the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 59. I feel like he works best when he was with CJ. That's just my opinion. He had a lot more swag in his game, and that's the years that he had more interceptions. He had 9 total interceptions altogether in his career with the Eagles. And, he was a tackling machine. For a safety to always be in top 3 in tackling for the team every year, that just shows that the guy, he's coming down and he's making the hits. And if anything comes to the secondary, he's going to hit them too. So shout out to Reed Blankenship for that. I don't know who they're going to get to replace that type of production and tackling, but Fangio knows what he's doing, so they're going to have to replace that production. But shout out to Reed Blankenship, man. Good luck in his career. And moving forward, we have Nakobe Dean. Cole Dean, I feel like injuries really just kind of displaced him off the team because we know what he brings to the team, man. We see the difference when he plays. When he's not playing, the run-stopping ability is kind of suffering a little bit. But when he's in the game, he's a thumper, man. And he's going to lay something out, and that's just what's going to happen. And, right now, the linebacker room, I'm not sure who's really putting the hits down like that. I know we got guys that are great for coverage, but Nakobe Dean was the one that was really run-stopping. And I don't know how they're going to replace that. But like I said, injuries kind of like derailed him from the team. That's a guy that spent a good 4 years on the team. And if it wasn't for injuries, I feel like more people would know his name because this guy, he's a winner as well, going all the way back to GA, just championships. And I remember Jalen Carter once saying that, he's been my leader all the way back in college. And that's a big deal. You can't sleep on stuff like that, because he seems to be a glue guy. The Eagles had like 5 UGA guys on the team, and Nakobe Dean, he's the guy they all kind of look to. So it's going to be missed, man, and I really wish that they would have resigned him. I was championing that, but, it's a business at the end of the day. And shout out to him for turning down the Cowboys to choose the Raiders. And people are clowning him for that, but I think the Raiders are going to do good this year, and that's another story. But shout out to him for staying a true Eagle, man, because at the end of the day, some people chasing that bag and they offered him the same thing. He could have went to Dallas, bigger market as far as like just the things that come with being with the star and being in Dallas and Texas and all of that, and no taxes and all, just all the benefits that come with being in Texas. But he turned that down to be in Las Vegas because not only do they have good pedigree as well as far as the Raiders organization is concerned for being a historic team, but they're trying to turn things around. They got Tom Brady involved. So he's looking at the bigger picture, and he's staying true to Eagle fans. So shout out to Nakobe Dean. Good luck in the future. Moving on, we have Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips, I don't have anything negative to say about the guy. A lot of people in Dolphins fan base were upset with him for joining the Eagles. They accused him of just wanting to chase a ring and stuff like that. And, who blames a guy that wants to win a championship when you've been on a losing team? But it didn't work out that way. He played with the Eagles for 9 games. And now I don't think he's chasing championships anymore. I think he's chasing the bag. I don't have a problem with that. You got to do what you got to do. But he's on the Panthers, and they're going to play better next year as well. But I don't see much happening there. So good luck to him as well. That's the defensive side thus far. On the offensive side, the Eagles have lost Jahan Dotson as a starter. That's really significant, is the loss that's happened thus far. And, as wide receiver number 3, I feel like he did a really good job for what he was asked to do in this type of system. You know, he played the game to his abilities, and he was able to get things done from the standpoint of he knew he was in a high volume running offense, and wide receiver number 3 is rarely going to see the ball. So especially when you have a quarterback that's going to be careful with the ball, like Jalen Hurts is not going to have many throwing attempts throughout the year, you know. So it was hard for Jahan Dotson to get the ball in the system that they were in. But he was pivotal in that Super Bowl run. I remember he had the only touchdown of the game when it was a quiet game in that Packers game in the playoffs, and he kind of got things going. And then in the Super Bowl, you know, he had that big catch that set up the touchdown that was almost a touchdown from him. And they called his number on that play, and he came through. So I believe that he can handle that. In the first game of the 2025 season, he had the big catch, the biggest catch of the game, in my opinion, to get the game going. And also had another big catch in the Giants game. So, you know, I felt like a lot of his catches were actually big catches if you watch his highlights while he was with the Eagles. He played 2 years for the Commanders, 2 years for the Eagles. He was a first-round draft pick. And I believe he's going to do well on the Falcons. I'm not sure if he's going to be wide receiver 2 or 3 on their squad, but I'm sure they're going to use him a lot more than his first 2 teams. So good luck to Jahan Dotson in the future. You can't take away the fact that he's a Super Bowl champion. So good luck to that guy. In other news, Darius Slay retired. You know, he did well for the Eagles. He was drafted by the Lions in the 2nd round, and he played a lot of years in the league, 13 years. And he played a lot of those years with the Eagles, going to 2 Super Bowls with them, and also winning one, becoming a captain a couple of years, and, you know, just doing his best to bring Quayon Mitchell along. I appreciate the fact he was able to do that. That was his old head when he was on the team, bringing him along. And you could tell that Q really respects him. So shout out to Darius Slay for the things that he was able to do for the team. And also earlier, I forgot to mention Reed Blankenship. You know, that's one half of the Exciting Mics. So I'm sure that podcast is done. So those are some of the players that the Eagles have lost thus far in this free agency and off-season market. But, you know, in good news, some players that were able to be retained, starting with Jordan Davis, well-deserved, well-earned, especially in this past season. Just the transformation that the guy has made from just physical transformation when he first joined the team. A lot of things that were disappointing earlier in Jordan Davis's career, you know, doing commercials for local chicken shacks and stuff like that while being out of shape. It wasn't a good look at all, but he's really put in the work. And I mean, it's obvious. You can see it. It's just like night and day. But at the end of the day, he was able to get himself under control and really performed well, especially this year that Jalen Carter was injured a lot. He had an heroic moment in the LA game earlier in the season to kind of just keep things rolling for the Birds, especially when there was a lot of doubt. That game was a game that the team rallied back and fought back and was still looking like they were going to lose in the last seconds. And Jordan Davis was able to, you know, he showed a glimpse of what could be for him as a player. So shout out to him and his family for securing the bag. He earned it. And I just hope he's able to, you know, become a leader on the team moving forward. You can tell that the guy really cares about his teammates, and he seems to be, you know, a good guy for the locker room. And hopefully he can earn his way to being a captain one day and remain a Bird. Braden Mann was also re-signed as well. And shout out to him. He had a lot of great moments throughout the season. There were some moments that, you know, you could take back, but touchbacks are going to happen. But a lot of times he did his job. He did the proper thing he was supposed to do, pinning the offense all the way back. So shout out to Braden Mann. Grant Calcaterra was also re-signed as well. And I don't have a problem with Calcaterra. I feel like he's a good tight end as far as catching the ball is concerned. I'm not sure how he's going to take a step forward, but I do know that he needs to work on his blocking. because Grant Calcaterra is the reason a lot of running plays did not work. He's the reason a lot of plays that had a lot of play action or just more intricacy to it at the top of the play. He's the reason the play collapsed just at the top of the play. You know, you just going back to the Kansas City game earlier in the season. I believe that was the second game or the third game or something like that. And the first play of the game, the Eagles could have had a touchdown from Hurts to Brown. As soon as the play started, Grant Calcaterra just whiffed on his block. Jalen Hurts ended up fumbling the ball. They ended up recovering the ball. So, you know, it didn't turn out to be a total disaster. But I just remember that was Grant Calcaterra's fault. And throughout the season, he had a lot of blunders just like that, you know, missing his blocks all the time. He just has to really clean that up. I like him as a player. He celebrates with other people during their success. So I always appreciate guys like that. But, you know, you also can't be a detriment to the squad, you know, and blocking is a big deal, especially when you're a tight end and when you play for the Eagles. That's a running team. You have to block. You have to hold your blocks. You can't be whiffing on your blocks. And Dallas Goedert was also retained to a 1-year deal. And I feel like that's not bad. I feel like last year they should have just put him on a 2-year or 3-year type of contract just to, you know, keep things cool. But I understand that they have to manipulate the money and stuff like that. And this year he's playing for $7 million compared to the 10 that he played for last year. And last year he was highly productive. And I knew it from the first game of the season when he was targeted 7 times and caught all 7 passes in a game that, you know, passing yards were hard to come by generally. So shout out to him for remaining on the squad. He had 11 touchdowns this year. That was a record for him and a record for the Eagles. QB1 is very reliant on Dallas Goedert. And, you know, shout out to Howie Roseman for being able to retain him. You know, he's on the other side of the age that you kind of want players to be on, because in the NFL, once you hit 30, they treat you like you're ancient. But he still got some years in him, and I feel like he missed a lot of games throughout the course of his career due to injuries. And that could be one or two things for guys. You know, that can be something that ends their career a lot faster or something that preserves them, because those games that they missed, they can make up for it on the back end. So, you know, shout out to Dallas Goedert. Hopefully he has another big year coming up in a different system. Keeping it on tight ends, the Eagles were able to retain Johnny Munt. I'm not sure how you say his last name. This guy's played in the league for a lot of years. He's going into his 10th season right now, and he wasn't highly productive throughout his career, but seems to be a backup because Dallas Goedert and Grant Calcaterra, they can both, you know, face injuries at times and be out for a few games. So just having another big body tight end that's experienced come in and keeping it on offense, the newest acquisition for QB1 is Hollywood Brown. And, you know, this is a guy that he's had a lot of years in the league as well. He's going into his 8th year. This is going to be his 4th team. He's played for Baltimore, Arizona, and Kansas City. So he's an experienced guy. I think he's there to replace Jahan Dotson. You know, they're trying to assemble something together right now, and Howie's cooking, so we're going to let him do what he does and try to assemble the roster. On the defensive side, the biggest splash that's been made so far is Rick Woolen coming off a Super Bowl win with the Seattle Seahawks. It's just going to be difficult for offenses to throw the ball all over the Eagles. When you got Cooper DeJean, Rick Woolen, and of course Quinyon Mobay, I think the defense is really going to hit another stride just with that right now. So like I said, we're going to discuss a lot more things moving forward in the offseason. But for now, we see what's going on. We lost a lot of guys, but we also acquired a lot more, and still a lot more happening. We're going to let Howie cook and see what happens throughout the course of the offseason, getting ready for the season. Can't wait for the season to start. Can't wait for the preseason, all of that stuff. Go Birds.
Them birds gonna fly, you already know. Race to the snow, Eagles train to go.